Another day is here, and you're ready for it. What to wear? Check. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Check. Planning for what's next and how to save for it? That's where Bank of America can help. For your financial to-dos, Bank of America has experts ready to help get you closer to your goals. Get started at one of our local financial centers or 24/7 in our mobile banking app. Find a location near you at bankofamerica.com/talktous. What would you like the power to do? Mobile banking requires downloading the app and is only available for select devices. Message and data rates may apply. Bank of America N.A., member FDIC.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Hello and welcome to AI Scouted and our latest edition of our Euro 2024 podcast. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, Karl?
I am doing remarkably well, considering I'm operating on about 1.5 minutes sleep, but otherwise pretty sound.
Well, that is what happens when there are major international tournaments going on, and obviously we had a very busy weekend. We recorded our Saturday and Sunday podcast on Saturday before the games. So Saturday's games, Hungary 1, Switzerland 3, Spain 3, Croatia 0, and Italy 2, Albania 1. So just your general thoughts on the Saturday games. Was there anything that surprised you or stood out to you? And maybe just a minute or two on Dominik Szoboszlai, who I thought had a really poor first half and then really grew into the game in the second half. And I felt like Hungary, based on their second half performance, maybe could have snatched a draw, but overall I did feel like the Swiss were worthy winners on the day.
Yeah, I thought the Swiss were quite comfortably better. I thought Hungary might be a little bit more aggressive from the start. They did stand off quite a bit. Switzerland looked really, really comfortable in their shape. Probably Hungary didn't get as many players forward on the counter-attack as would have expected them to do. Certainly with the shape that they set up in. Can kind of understand a little bit of maybe not reluctance, but safety first approach in that first game. But as we spoke about, it's going to be a fairly tricky group for them to try and sort of leave everything on the last two games to definitely get enough points to go through. Switzerland, I thought were pretty good, to be honest. I was expecting them to be good. I think they were very, very well organised, very, very good movement off the ball, in and out of possession. One or two surprising names on the team sheet, obviously, but in general, kind of expected exactly what we got, and it works for them really, really well. Their depth in a few key areas looks quite nice as well, to be honest. So I'm sticking with Switzerland as a ones to watch to go quite deep. Szoboszlai, kind of agree with you. Really quiet first half, didn't really get himself involved. Floated about a little bit more second half. Probably they passed forward a little bit quicker. I'd say that was one of the reasons to get him more involved, which is obviously a necessary thing as far as they're concerned. This was beautifully delivered, but I think even while he was playing quite poorly and quite quietly, he did make sort of 2 or 3 passes from deep and wide areas, which were very, very similar. A couple of free kicks, which weren't attacked really, were into really good areas. So I was impressed with his delivery, if not his overall contribution, let's say. And then a few other players from Hungary, I think Herkes had a really good game, certainly for the first sort of, maybe hour or so. He maybe started to tire a little bit after that. Schaefer I thought was pretty good in midfield for them. So there's a few things to improve from them, but I think they can take bits of heart as well, up until obviously the late error for the third goal.
Yeah, and I think if they play the way they did in the second half against the Scots, that becomes quite a winnable game for them. That second half performance was more similar to what we'd seen in qualifying in that. But the first half performance, like you said, just very passive, standing off, kind of set into a shape that wasn't as rock solid as I think they hoped it would be. They need to play more like they did in the second half and play at that tempo, and I think that's how they can have some success. Anything jump out of either Spain against Croatia or Italy versus Albania that you wanted to note?
Probably the Spain-Croatia game, in that Croatia were even more oak tree-like than we were expecting them to be. Spain, when they got into their passing groove, just walked through them. I thought that was a big warning red flag there for Croatia. Like the technical aspect of it, we know, but there was a real lack of mobility in their side, which is very, very concerning from their perspective. And Spain were exactly as we both kind of mentioned them to be, really good on the ball, really good sort of front 4, 5, 6 at times, but question marks over them defensively for sure.
Yeah, fully agree there. And, we sort of look at Croatia based on what they have done at World Cups, but it is worth remembering they weren't great at the last Euros.
They've been great at any Euros.
No, this is the thing. They tend not to be, for whatever reason, quite as good at these tournaments as they have been at World Cups. Obviously, they came out of the group with England last time out, but then lost to Spain in the round of 16. And no shame there, but they didn't look like the Croatian teams that we've seen at either the 2018 or 2022 World Cups. Moving on then to Sunday's games. To start with the middle game, Slovenia won, Denmark won. The Danes went 1-up. Christian Eriksen, as we predicted, was kind of vital for them. Thought they got some decent performances, but I thought Højlund had a bit of a stinker, and that hurt them, and Slovenia equalised on 77 minutes through Janza. That's a great point for Slovenia, and a disappointing result, I think, for the Danes. But the early and late games, obviously, a little bit more interesting, particularly to us as Liverpool fans. So Poland won, the Netherlands 2. Adam Buksa scores on 16 with a pretty good header, having been lost by multiple Dutch defenders. Did see some people trying to blame Virgil for that goal. Not really sure the thought process there. Cody Gakpo would equalise on 29 minutes. It was a very, very risky pass from Zalewski that Aki did really well to step forward and pick off. Ball broke to Gakpo. He turned, drove. He hits a shot that might have troubled Szczesny, but we'll never know, because it took a very big deflection and went the opposite side and found the back of the net. And then Wout Weghorst, who we were pointing out hasn't had a good couple of seasons, doing what he did at the World Cup, being the right man in the right place at the right time, and grabbing a late Dutch winner on 83 minutes. Thoughts on Poland versus the Netherlands, and in particular Cody and Virgil, because obviously Ryan Gravenberch wasn't one of those that came off the bench.
Yeah, so a really interesting match. Tactically didn't match each other up, which is always like an interesting thing to see early on in tournaments, obviously. I think that Netherlands, insofar as their line-up, actually got strong when they were making substitutions, to be honest. A couple of fairly questionable selections from Ronald Koeman. Veerman had a terrible game. I think he's so far off the level of being a Dutch starter in central midfield, to be honest. If he plays like that again, I think they would have to very, very quickly consider taking him outside if they hope to go deep. Poland, they played a bit more offensive-minded than I thought they might do at times. Like, obviously, they didn't have like oodles of possession or anything, but they were quite quick to get the ball forward. More importantly, to get some of those numbers from midfield forward. That was more than I expected from them in those terms. But to be perfectly honest, they probably should have been 3-0 down before they really started to get numbers forward and get themselves into the area.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think the Poles can take some heart from this game. But with the Dutch, like you said, I think there's just lessons to learn here. I was the same. Like, Veerman had a really, really good campaign with PSV. And I was looking at the two midfielders, which is obviously it's the PSV pairing. He's decided to go with familiarity in there because obviously he's lost his starting pairing. And, objectively, when you watch them play for PSV, Joey Veerman is the one that stands out. Jordy Schuiten is kind of the one that you'd question whether he's quite good enough to be at this level. And yet he looked the much better player, while, as you said, Veerman had a really poor game. And I thought bringing on Ginny was actually kind of vital to the Dutch turnaround. I do wonder if Ginny might keep his place ahead of the next game. Last but not least, then, Serbia 0, England 1. Trent starts in midfield, had a bit of a mixed bag of a performance. Not good, not bad, just okay. You know how I feel. He's not a midfielder, and I don't like the idea of him in a double pivot. I thought a lot of England players were poor, though. I thought Kane was largely a non-factor. I think he touched the ball twice in the entirety of the first half and had one successful pass out of 2 attempted. I thought he was poor. I thought Foden was poor. I thought Trippier was poor. I thought Mark Guehi played really well and was probably England's best player. I thought Declan Rice had a good game. Jude obviously scored. Bukayo Saka gets credit for the assist, but his cross took a big deflection, which is what looped it. I thought Jude's bravery to get on the end of it was impressive, but not necessarily a great Jude performance either. I felt like in the second half, if there was going to be a second goal, I felt like it was going to come from Serbia. I did think they started to just climb their way back into the game, and in the second half, I thought they were the better team. What did you think of the game overall? Maybe start with Trent.
I realise now I completely forgot to talk about Cody Gakpo on your last question. Sorry. Gakpo, I would say it was very nice to see him playing aggressively and quickly and directly from the left-hand side again. So we'll see how he does in terms of consistency there. That's all I'll say at this point. On Trent, I think Trent kind of gave the performance I would expect from him in midfield. Like, I saw a lot of people complaining that he was giving the ball away and stuff like that. Well, unless you've never watched Trent Alexander-Arnold play football before, I don't know what you thought you were going to get. He's not Andrea Pirlo. He's not going to give 75 short 8-yard passes a game, some of which are forward passing, some of which are from really deep. He's going to be the one who makes the unexpected passes, try and make the diagonals, try and drop the ball over the top of the defence. Obviously, you don't want him to do it all the time, and he's going to have to get up to speed with that. But by and large, I think his use of the ball was fine. He was exactly what I would expect from him. Defensively, I think is where there are going to be valid concerns as it goes on. He did give the ball away with one poor touch in the first half. He didn't track a couple of runners sort of once in the second half, and the next time he did, but then they doubled back again and he didn't. So a couple of those things that somebody who doesn't play midfield, again, I'm sorry, you're going to have to expect it. And if you don't want him to be in the team or you want someone else doing that job, then fair enough, but don't complain that Trent's not in the team, because obviously he's not getting in at right back at this point. So I think England were fine, to be perfectly honest. Game, really, really aggressive opponent, played very, very well on the ball in possession for the first sort of 25 minutes or so. And considering it's a completely new midfielder who had never started a match together, a new central defensive partnership in tournament terms, I thought they defended really well as well. They didn't have the ball and they should more of it in the second half, but you are going to have to defend well during the tournament if you want to go really deep. You are going to come up against teams who are simply bigger and are going to batter you at times, and you've got to find a way to stand up to them. And how often did Serbia really come close to scoring? But once, and that was a 25-yard shot on the turn, which was tipped over the bar. It wasn't like a really, really close call. I thought England were fine. Not great, but fine. Good and valid for a win.
Look, the only thing that really matters in the group stage is the final result. So if you get a win and you get 3 points, it doesn't really matter how you got there. It only matters that you get there and you get those 3 points, and it puts you one step closer to making the knockout rounds. But they are going to need to up the level of performance when they play better teams. That's what I'll say. They're going to face better teams. In all likelihood, they will face a better team in this group, in the Danes, and they're going to need to play better. But I wouldn't have any enormous concerns coming out of that game, other than I do just feel like the lack of real pace in that front four and the lack of balance in that defence, because Trippier is not good at left back. Those would be the major concerns for me. And I do wonder how Trent will hold up against a team that maybe move the ball a bit more intricately, with a bit more intricacy in midfield. But like you said, he kind of summed up the England performance. He wasn't great. He wasn't up to his normal standard, but he wasn't bad. Like, he was just okay. He was fine. And he got the job done to the extent that he could get it done. And England did exactly the same thing. They're going to need to get Harry Kane more involved. Trent is going to have to be a little bit more calm and patient with his passing, though. Like, I know he's not Andrea Pirlo, but if he's going to play in that midfield role and he's in there for that passing ability and that ability to control games, he does need to take aspects of Pirlo's game and realize that when you don't have pace on the left, for example, or up front, you can't go long to those players because you are putting them in a situation where they're probably going to lose the ball. Again, that comes to Southgate and the choices he can make in the team. But yeah, I think overall it was absolutely fine. And maybe people just want to pick at Trent in particular because it's the cool thing to do. We have 3 games today, Karl. So the first game is Romania versus Ukraine. That is the 2 p.m. kickoff. Thoughts on this one?
Possibly the lowest key one that we've had so far. Is that fair to suggest?
I think so.
Yeah, Romania's squad, we've been over it already. It's not good. Like, it's not a very impressive squad, and yet they came through qualifying unbeaten. We do have to sort of respect that and point it out. They didn't concede very many goals at all. I think it was 5 in their 10 games, something like that. They also didn't have a particularly strong qualifying. Again, sort of, all cards on the table. They didn't lose, but they didn't really have a powerhouse or anything of the sort in their group. They won 604, I think it was, off the top of my head, something like that. So clearly they have a good setup. I haven't watched them. Like I said, I've not been keeping an eye on them or anything like that other than results-wise. So it's not a team I'm familiar with in terms of playing style, but numbers would point to me to be very, very well set up. Everybody knows their job, and having familiarity in there is probably going to be first and foremost what they rely on. I am looking forward to seeing Ukraine, though, because a few of their players play in slightly different roles than you would see at club level all the time. You've also got a few people who've had a really, really good campaign domestically. Andrew Lunin in goal, for example. Zabani at centre-backs had a really good year. So I am looking forward to that. Most of all, Artem Dovbyk, because he was absolutely smashing people all over the place in La Liga this season.
Yeah, the one I'm really looking forward to seeing from them is Sudakov, the Dynamo Kiev midfielder who's been linked to a lot of clubs. You're right about Romania. I mean, the group they came through, Switzerland, Israel, Belarus, Kosovo, and Andorra. So not footballing titans, but they did top the group, 5 points clear of the Swiss. Like you said, 6 wins, 4 draws, 16 goals scored, and only 5 conceded, which, like, no matter who you're playing, to only concede 5 goals in 10 games is very, very strong. But you talked about this on one of the pods over the weekend, where you're about the strength of the group rather than the individuals, and that's very much what this is. The sum of the parts is stronger than the individual pieces, and that's how they'll have to approach this. But I think this should be a decent enough game. I think there's enough technical ability on both sides for it to be fairly entertaining. After that, at 5 p.m., we get Belgium versus Slovakia. And this is an interesting one because there's obviously still some big names in that Belgian squad, but it is the very, very, very tail end of the golden era, to call it that, despite the fact that they actually won nothing. No Thibaut Courtois, who ruled himself out 2 months ago and then obviously came back to play in the Champions League final. And I do wonder why there wasn't more attempts made to get him on board. Kevin De Bruyne is there. Jan Vertonghen is there. But, Toby Alderweireld is gone and Eden Hazard is gone. And it just... it feels like they deserve some respect for some of the talent, and there's some really good young players in the squad, but they don't strike me as a team that's any kind of threat to do much, which it would be kind of funny if they were to do really well, considering how many times they let everybody down when they had that great group of players.
Yeah, I don't see it, I'll be honest. The golden era, the golden team, the golden group, whatever you want to call them, let's be honest, they were a bronze group. That's all they achieved and nothing else. I don't really like this Belgium squad. I just don't like the balance of it. I don't like where some players are playing. Axel Witzel's still being involved, still being at centre back. Woodface existing. I'm just not having it. I'm sorry. And even like in defence, like in the sort of wing back areas when he plays with the back three, I get that you want to have a balance, and I get that you want to have different capabilities. But like if you start Doku and Castagna, who he has done, is such a disparity in how you can build up down one flank or down the other flank, and what you get out of each player, and how much even defensive work you're going to get out of each player. I just feel like a lot of this Belgium squad is going to rely on how fit and how sharp Kevin De Bruyne is. Like they've probably Trossard alongside him or whatever, and Lukaku up top still. So you've got goals if Lukaku's on his game, and you've got not really enough if Lukaku's not on his game. I don't know. I just think so much is going to come down to De Bruyne, and as you alluded to in the last time we spoke about them, maybe that is part of the reason there wasn't a bigger push to get Courtois back. It's possible.
Yeah, it is possible because it's well known the two don't get on. They have personal issues. It is just funny. Like you look at the squad, and you could see the framework of a very exciting team. Players like Vermeeren and Onana in midfield, Doku, Openda in attack. How many of them actually start remains to be seen. Zeno de Bast at centre back. Like there is a really, and obviously there's Johan Bakayoko as well. There is a really nice group of young players kind of emerging behind the older generation. And you'd wonder if maybe the better thing would have been to start the transition to them, because like nobody expects them to win this competition. I don't even think there's any internal expectation that they could win it. But maybe if they were to start preparing, by the time we get to the next World Cup, maybe like the players I've mentioned, plus the Ketelier maybe as the 10 behind Openda, Doku and Bakayoko as the wingers, Onana, Vermeeren, Romeo Lavia, Astor Franks, a very strong group of midfield players. Maybe by the time we got to the World Cup, that team would be ready to actually go and not win it. Nobody would expect them to win it, but go and have a good deep run and really set down a marker for what the next generation can do. But for whatever reason, they're very tied to a lot of these older players, and I'm just not sure it's the best thing for them. Final game of the day then, and this is one of the things you took umbrage with the other day. After the two Group E games, we get the second game from Group D, as Austria take on France. And France are obviously the favourites to win the competition, but I think there's legitimate reasons to have some doubts about whether or not they can win the competition. What do you think about Austria versus France, and who are you looking forward to seeing play?
Yeah, there is. First of all, I want to see how Thuram does lead in the line. That's been a long time coming, really, for anybody other than Giroud, obviously doing the job. So I think that'll be quite an interesting one. We've already spoken about Konate and Upamecano as a centre-back partnership, and whether or not it should be Saliba, whether familiarity is a good thing in this instance. Mike Maignan level of fitness, especially after a hand injury, is going to be really important as well. You would imagine that if there is any doubt over him, you just leave him out because he's a goalkeeper. You don't want that to happen again. You certainly don't want to have to go through a tournament playing Samba as a go-to number one. From the Austria side, I just would like to see how they deal against a really, really strong opponent, because by all accounts, Ralf Rangnick has them playing some lovely football at times, and they're well organised and they understand the approach that he wants to take. So I'd like to see that really put to the test as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair shout. I've only watched the Austrians once, I think, under Rangnick, and they do play a nice brand of football, which he has done pretty much everywhere bar that unfortunate spell at Manchester United. Right, Karl Matchell, I want one player from you today that people should keep an eye on in whichever game, Romania, Ukraine, Belgium, Slovakia, Austria, France. One player that you expect to be a standout today.
Ooh. I think I will go back to Ukraine and say Dovbyk. He's coming off the back of a career season, basically, with Girona. Hit the ground running there and just did incredibly well in terms of consistency as well. I think if Ukraine are going to do anything interesting at this tournament, this is a good game for them to do so, because Romania look like one of the weaker sides, but performed very strongly defensively, as we've already spoken about during qualifiers. If Ukraine don't win this game, suddenly I think it begins to look very, very difficult for them to get a second place, and you're relying on results elsewhere. So I think Ukraine are not actually a million miles away from group winners here, because I'm fairly low on Belgium. They may surprise me, but I'm going to stick with Ukraine as a potential go reasonably deep here because of the group they've been handed. So Dovbyk.
I like that one. I do like that one. He's coming off 24 goals in 36 games in La Liga. And like you said, just absolutely smashing centre-backs left, right, and centre. And I know he's qualified for the Champions League with them, and that's a huge achievement. But if he has a good tournament, maybe somebody will jump in and make a big offer for him this summer. I will also pick a Ukrainian, but I'll pick the guy who's most likely going to be tasked with supplying Dovbyk. I'll go with Sudikov. He's one I think that can really make a name for himself in this competition. Obviously playing at home with Shakhtar, has never played outside of Ukraine other than in European games. But I think he's a really interesting player that could well end up at a top side after this tournament. Right then, we will leave it there for today. Thank you as always. Predictions? Oh, predictions. I'm an idiot. Right. Okay. I will go Romania 1, Ukraine 2. How do you go?
I will go just the 1-0 to Ukraine.
Okay, I'm going to go Belgium 3, Slovakia 1. I don't like this Slovakian team.
I don't like this Belgium team. I'll go 2-1. They should do enough to win, obviously.
And Austria, France. You can go first.
I think the madness comes in the evening. I'll go for an Austria 2, France 2.
Oh, interesting. I'll be safe. I'll go 2-1 France. I just think they should have enough. But I do worry about Mannion, like you mentioned. The hand injury is not ideal for a goalkeeper. But if he's okay, I think he's one of the biggest question marks for France is just the fitness, because when he's fit and good to go, he's a top 5 goalkeeper in the world. And that would make all the difference for them. Right then, we'll be back tomorrow. Take care of yourselves, folks. Bye-bye.
Sports Social Podcast Network.